Pirates complicate things a great deal, just in terms of planning what I'm going to be doing as we enter the 2110 decade here in Stellar Horizons. I'm looking at the Russians trying to figure out what they're going to do, and I'm like, they have a little warship here, what's that going to do? And I think, well, I got the pirate, I can go hunt the pirate. Yeah, okay. But these guys were there. I could load them up and try to get through. Now, I could pay a ransom to go through, and that might be worth it. Or I could delay and wait until the warship, mine or someone else's, cleans things up. I don't know if there's a warship out there that far, but that's going to cause problems for everyone. And I don't know if I put enough money out for all of these things. I think I owe another 5. Actually, I owe more than that, but I think I forgot to put the money out for one of these guys. But I got 2 new pirates, so there should be 10 extra bucks out there. But yeah, I'm really not sure I want to risk going through. I can lift out of here, I think. Vostok, is that also covered? Mars is covered. Vostok's over here, so I can actually lift out of there and go straight out to my Saturn base. Other than Russia and the EU, nobody else feels terribly hindered by this, to tell you the truth. Some of the players, though, have decided, I mean, like South America does, but have decided I'm building myself a military ship. So we actually have a bunch of military ships showing up. Russia and China already had one on the board. Asia and South America both launched one. Lots of materials sitting out in the asteroid belt. Mainly lots of iron, which is the important thing, but you need the other stuff too. So we actually are going to have a race for who gets to kill the pirates, and we're going to have an excess of military ships on board, which might spark war. Might. All the piracy going on, I forgot about this when it started sending the Japanese there. I gotta send them somewhere else. Let's see. If they're going out to Saturn, I can get there. Is there a reason? Not really. This is not a useful ship to me anymore. I may just decommission this because I don't have any military. I don't have a military vessel to clear anything that's useful, unless I want to go to Earth. Why don't I go to Earth? That's the 2 box. There's a couple of things to search for there. Everyone went to Jupiter. Now, what I didn't realize was the Chinese warship was already programmed to be there. It had to slip through. Everyone succeeded in slipping through past the pirate, which was an iffy thing because in some cases there were ships carrying materials or that were in better shape, like this one, that maybe I don't want to retire by surrendering. Because you basically have 2 options. You can surrender or you can roll a die and pay that much in cash. Well, or you could let yourself be destroyed, but that's not a good option. Surrendering seems like not that high a pain cost. I think you lose a politics marker, but actually paying the bounty, that could be very low. It could just be $1, but it could also be 10. And it's like, no, the ship's not worth 10. You know, you're talking about 2 resources to recover the ship, plus whatever you might lose off the ship. So it's not that big a deal usually. But yeah, there was some tension there and nothing happened. But now everybody's poised here with their military ships, which means the Chinese win. They get first shot there, if I remember to, you know, jump in and take their order. But they may not find it, which means the next player gets a shot, the next player gets a shot, etc. End of decade exploration, or end of decade degradation of robots that are out there and stuff. and things they can explore, along with the pirates, meant this was a shitty turn for exploration. A lot of stuff's in movement, but not a lot of people were out there actually looking for things. So, for example, there's not even any telescopes out anymore. New stuff being launched up to get places. And then with the pirates, you know, the CVs are kind of not even moving in some cases. But we had a depletion here and a few points elsewhere, some things destroyed. Time to build bases. We got some interesting stuff starting, I think, at this point. All the trade chits, you know, the ones that can be easily cashed in at this point that make sense to just do, I just do. As we round things out, a couple of the players, I think, overdid the trade chits, especially early on. I don't know who. Not the Russians, probably the EU. Japan. Japan definitely did. They had a lot of buy chits that they played out. That means they have a lot of resources to move around, but they don't have a whole lot of shipping capability. Sell chits are a little easier because you can always turn them in. That's going to confuse me. You can always, you know, lift that money back up. Now, some of the players like the EU may have spent too many of their sell chits getting rid of resources they have out here to create money, which, you know, yeah, I can lift it, but how many boosters do I want to build? You know, at some point, that's not a great deal either. In general, I like the sell chits better because they let me create money that I can more easily reposition my resources. All right. It's damn early in the morning here on a Sunday, but it's about the time I get up to slip some extra effort in before work when, yeah, it's something I don't do with this game really, but with some other games I do. Hoping I didn't screw up. I don't think I did, but a bunch of people built military ships, and I think they were mainly built here in the asteroid belt. But, well, I know they were, but I'm hoping nothing was built in Mars. I don't see anything that looks like it was, because CV4 is the biggest ship I could launch from Mars without space elevators. The only person with space elevators is Japan. Now, Japan actually has the resources. They may just launch themselves a ship out of Mars, I think, to get that one. Yeah, it looks like I actually have enough that I could build a warship there, because nobody's going for Mars, so that one's mine to take as far as I see it. Can anyone else build, though, is the danger. So, no. It doesn't look like anyone else has the resources. It's kind of complicated because Redstone is the North American, and the Russian one, I'm not sure. I think it's this, but none of them look very big. So, yeah, I may have the opportunity, and I have the capability to do something no one else can do, which is I can actually build something on Mars and launch it right away. Interesting disparity in the rules here on search as the Chinese jump their turn ahead so that they can take a shot at this thing. If the fleet you're searching for contains a base on a world surface, you can initiate combat with it from orbit. I don't know what that means. I think that's just flavor text, to tell you the truth. Yeah. Okay. The disparity I thought I had was that you could automatically search for, succeed in finding it, but you can always find bases according to the next paragraph, so that's fine. There is no disparity. I think there's just some flavor text that had me a little confused, making it sound like, yeah, I could directly attack it here without searching for it, because this says search for, and this does not, and whatever. Resolving the combat, there was a search. The pirates actually found the Chinese, but didn't have enough tactics points because, you know, I get additional tactics points off the tech chart to be able to escape the combat. They were able to make a direct fire. Not that that matters. It would have to be. The Chinese are also direct fire capable, so They were able to succeed. They took 1 point of damage, however, and they get the bonuses, and I haven't given them the cash yet, but they get the political and victory point marker, and they get half the money. The other thing I wanted to discuss, though, was if the Chinese failed to find the pirates, these ships have to make a choice. They can hang around and hide in the system and not get able to search for because they're not leaving that that flyby box. Or they could try to run the blockade. It also chooses to jump ahead so that they can run out and grab an asteroid. And they have kind of a tricky situation where they had a freighter. Seeing the Japanese have this here, and I'm not sure in multiplayer if you would notice what other people are doing that well. I'm going to try to slip through, but more than that, I've got a follow-up military ship, and I'm also not carrying anything. I'm already fatigued. I think I lose a political marker if I fail, and I don't have one, so that's not a big deal. I'll look at it before I make that decision, but I've got all kind of backups in terms of what I can do, what might not work. Yeah, so, it seemed more important than shipping out to go build a base, which is what the Chinese are doing with their ship, which was probably a big mistake. That may have already been en route, but the Chinese did not grab the asteroid. They had to. Oh, I know why. So both of these ships were full of material, so I would have to abandon my material for that victory point, and I thought that was perhaps not that wise. I'm not sure. A victory point, how much is a victory point worth? Maybe 5, 10 material, so it's probably pretty close. But I just felt like, I can't do that. I'll have another shot at it, but yeah, it wasn't going to happen. That asteroid's going to get mined. At this point, the question comes down to, I don't think anybody else has anything they want to jump ahead to do, which means we'll go back and start from the tail end with the Russians and force them to move first. And these, on the other hand, did not get lucky and did not find their pirate yet. Now, they've got some time before this Asian ship gets there, but yeah, it's possible that they just may not get the bonus. Getting there first doesn't guarantee anything with that. Asteroids are a little different. You pretty much are guaranteed to get it. It's just you might get a fatigue out of it. Big colonization rush heading out here. What else? Bunch of people still on their way here. We got a couple people chasing down that pirate. And the thing is, these guys can explore too, so they can. There's plenty of points out there in Mercury. One of the few places it's kind of close to Earth and has a lot of points sitting on it, a 4 and a 5 to explore. So that's been ignored for too long. But when the pirate showed up, that kind of dampened the couple people who were thinking about heading that way. Explore it. Oh, a couple telescopes up there too. Both lifted dangerously. So like here, I used a level 4 booster. I maybe shouldn't do that, but I didn't have a lot of cash, and I'm like, a telescope's kind of a safe way to do exploration more quickly, get some things. Maybe I'll get a politics marker that I can convert into money and lift more stuff, because I'm a little worried Japan doesn't have much stuff lying around. Kind of an interesting choice here. South America on exploration got a depletion, got their points, whatever. They replaced the chit with a better chit, even though the U.S. has a base there, because this has a big search for life. We already had signs of life there. That would be a big bonus to gain, not because I need the tech, I have that already, but to gain the big extra draw for finding life. So, there are times when you're like, I don't know, this helps me, and I might end up landing here. And this has a couple of neat options. First of all, it has better production and it has better research. So no matter what you do, that was a better chit. Now, there's still room for someone to degrade that once, but I doubt they will, simply because of that search for life bonus, you know. Players like Russia are basically doing no exploration right now. North America is also like that, although they did throw up a telescope, which I, of course, forgot to use because I'm so used to passing them by, and then went back and did it. That puts us to our base side, and just, I don't know, I'll figure it out. I'm fucking tired now. Myself in a bit of a fuck up. I had the South Americans hauling resources out Saturn way to build a base. They're the one person who can't do that. They were not able to get the +3 base cost, so I sent another ship off towards Mercury there. Just, you know, and that kind of fuck up I tend to make, and I'm real tired right now. There's boosting stuff up to bases that maybe aren't on the edge of the frontier. Just, you know, I can build settlements here. That might be useful. I also have shit to sell. Whatever. A few people, well, still quite a few people, throwing exploration vehicles out. More expensive than boosting crap up to your bases, but it gets you the technology and, you know, possibly some victory points, but unlikely. And then I guess that's about it. The North Americans trying to build their their supply station here. Likewise, the Russians trying to build up their supply station so they can just keep pushing. We're getting to a weird position, though. So the Russians in particular are sitting with, because they built that extra Earth base, if they build at Uranus, they're done. And that's kind of what they're aiming at. So let's take a look at the victory point payouts. Whether maybe I'm making a mistake and should be focusing on something further out. It's always hard to keep in mind victory points when I'm working, but settlements beyond Jupiter and Saturn. Okay, so anything out here is worthwhile. And I'm not going to get to Alpha Centauri, which is a big victory point bonus, without going elsewhere. So the question then becomes, is this worth having? Or do I want to wait for a better planetary card? And honestly, this looks pretty decent, you know, if that's what's left. My addled brain, though. Oh, I see. Russia has one left at Uranus. North America has Uranus already and has one left that I could push out as far as Neptune. But it doesn't matter, you know. Anything out there is good. So yeah, and everyone else is on the North American path, stepping each planet, and then eventually we'll get out to those outer planets, see what comes out. And in a way, it may be better to be waiting rather than trying to push and get more resources out there. But the more bases you have that have, you know, either a research station or a miner, a refinery or whatever on them, the more you're producing stuff. And the more settlements you have, the more die rolls you give for settlements. That doesn't matter as much because concentrated settlements in one place or another are just as good. What you want to do is have them concentrated way out in the outer areas as much as possible, which of course means the earlier you get a start on that, the better you are. How much are those victory points worth? Well, I think more than these little piles of victory points. These aren't bad, but these little piles of victory points aren't that important. It's those piles of mission counters, which are really the thing to be looking at. Although, you know, we're looking at somebody with 8 victory points compared to 1 and a pile of mission counters. Yeah, North America doesn't look like they're doing as well as China. Russia might be doing as well. Nobody else seems to be in that range. For the movement, a couple of things tapped out of interest. One is the Japanese again failed to find this, which means this poor Asian ship isn't going to be able to escape, isn't going to be able to make it through. Well, I'll have to look at the rules to see if it wants to. And the EU made the decision to land here. This is a slightly better location because of the intrinsic bonuses for resource production. Now, does that matter if I'm going to build a research base? Yeah, probably not, but later in the game, I may have my research tapped out and not be interested in that anymore and build resource production there to allow me to shift shit around, you know, to produce goods to send out elsewhere. And given that, you know, it just looks better. And if that's the case, you know, if they're going here, we're seeing a preponderance of the bases starting to form there. It becomes really kind of a, I'm going to slit my own wrist to go over here. A few people have to do it. If the EU had gone here, maybe China would go here too and be convinced into it. But then again, maybe the EU just gets left behind. This one is clearly slightly better. And a quick glance at the rules, and that may mean I missed something, but showed that there's nothing to fear here. I would be reserved, I would lose any cargo, and I would lose a politics marker if I had one. Forgot to shoot this up. I'll have to do that. Everybody following here. Chinese following up with immediately more resources to throw into the base after it's built. That's kind of cool. They actually have, it's kind of the opposite of some people. They have they're two heavy colonizing ships pushing to get that built up. Whereas, what is it? The Asians have one out here finally, but they had, with someone, South America can't colonize, that's why they weren't an issue. They're flying their freighter. They're flying, they've got this freighter, which I restored, probably at a waste, but, you know, I don't know. No, I don't know. All right. Yeah. And we move into 2011-03. Well, 2/11/03. 2113. There we go. That sounds better. Always hard to grasp those new decades. And we got the new bases showing up out here. Let's make it look like a land base. By the way, I may have stated something like CVs could explore. They actually can't. They can't explore the gas giants at all. That's actually noted on each of the gas giants. So the severe atmosphere thing just prevents them from building a base. That's all it has an impact on. An orbital base, as opposed to, you know, you obviously can't ground something there. So you can only explore those things with orbiters and flybys. Well, and the telescope, I guess. And we see a lot of that action starting to set up. Both Russia and North America building up their spaceports. North America up to, you know, they just got a small supply station, but, you know, so they've got a couple more turns. But the Russians are actually set up so that they can go explore Uranus next. My pace on this game so far being slowed down. I've got almost a frenetic energy to try to push through more of it right now. There's reasons for that. One is next week I know I have to probably go shopping. Work days I get 1 or 2 turns in. So I'm kind of like, let's see if I can finish up another decade. I doubt I'll be able to, but I might be able to get a pretty good chunk in. I hope. This is sort of how I get through games, because, you know, I plod through and push myself to play that 1 turn a day or whatever, just as a matter of kind of duty. And then, you know, when I do have time, I'm like, must do more. It's a factor of duty rather than, you know, just the pure pleasure of playing, particularly. Shorter games maybe get me through just on the pleasure, but it's really hard to get through these big, longer games by just, oh yeah, this is what I want to do most. No, I'd rather read or right now play computer games or just whatever. You know, but even doing housework sounds appealing in some ways. But no, I have to do this. This is my commitment. This is why I started, you know, knowing that I have to play. Anyway, what do we got? We got servicing of outermost locations. We got the Russians pushing out into Uranus. Yeah. I don't want to say Uranus, but that's how I was taught to say it. And you know, while I take some amusement, it's not very much. Likewise out here, trying to get resources out to the furthest locations. A couple of people still stuck behind this problem here. And Japanese just don't have the money to do much. And I'm trying to remember what else. There was something else going on that I wanted to speak to, but I'm not quite sure what it is, so I'll leave it be. Okay, I guess the exciting thing is neither Asia nor Japan managed to conquer these pirates, and the Chinese are sending their battle-hardened crew over there to work on it. The best ship by far is actually, for combat, is actually the Asian one. But, well, that Japanese one's pretty cool too, with all that missile power on it. But they both have advantages in finding the pirate. The Chinese do not, which means these guys are rolling for 5s. The pirate's rolling for a 4 if either one gets it. But we've had just this bad set of rolls. Otherwise, things largely has represented a lot of resources coming into, you know, the outer limit bases. Chinese going off to do some mining here. Why? Because I can't go exploring out here and there's nothing of interest anywhere in the Jupiter-Saturn region. So, and the U.S. did the same thing out here, you know, and Russians are setting up to do so as well. Just this, let's get some, although they can at least search in both cases out at Uranus. I'm just so bothered by it now. Anyway, that's what we see in. A bit of a dichotomy in terms of player strategies here. A number of the players are going with kind of a mixed strategy. Lots of these robots out here still trying to push their bases as hard as they can. However, I would say that Russia and North America are focusing more on bases. And part of that, for North America certainly, is just cash. They have enough cash to either build their bases out or to do the exploration. They're going to do the exploration with the CVs as they work there, but they're not throwing a lot of robots out. Russia has tons of cash, and is probably should be pushing more of the robots out, but they've been just focusing so hard on getting the bases pushed as hard as possible, as fast as possible, for the guaranteed bonuses of that. You know, and I mean, little stuff out here like mining and stuff, running out towards Mercury. It's not like we're ignoring exploration. It's just we're not focusing on the robotic exploration, which is more expensive. It uses up my booster. I could build more boosters, though. I have enough cash to do so. The EU is doing that, although they lost one of their boosters. They threw a telescope up with a 1-point booster, and it blew up, which that's pretty cool, because then I didn't waste my level 3 booster on lifting that. Of course, some people, like the EU, have ships stuck under the blockade of those damn pirates. Because of North America's kind of lousy, let me finish up the year, lousy start, they actually don't have as much production. They have small refineries in a couple of these places. That maybe I should be building those up and trying to work it. I also don't have a colonization here, no settlement, so I can't get rid of the chip, which is a factor as well that I really ought to be looking at. So I may want to concentrate a little bit less on expanding and a little bit more on getting my production up before the end of this decade, because that's been something that North America has been hurt with. Elsewhere, well, China's actually kind of rocking, getting their supply station built up, but they're also building up settlements in the back areas. Just like, screw it, man. Let's get things, a little larger. Same thing with the Asians, building up. They actually sold materials here that I'm going to need to that I might need to help colonize. But right now, I've got a lot of metal and fire, which is something I can ship there. I'm having trouble moving these things, so I bought a bunch of goods, which, trimmed the money that I got from this, but I can always shift goods around. I've got some freighter capacity. And that is the end. And we get into what? Well, 2114. Okay, it looks like I cheated by a turn or maybe more. This Russian ship is not going to be able to build, could not fly out. Here it is yet. Only CV3s can make it out there. So I'm going to pull this back by a turn. I don't know if I heard anything, if there was some opportunity that I had. But honestly, I can't even probably have that out there, although that's built already. And this may have to wait 2 turns. I don't know. But this is the kind of stuff that is really tough for me to keep track of, is, can I have this ship there? Can I have this doing this? This support, there's so much to juggle in your head, and the support system is one of the things that falls by the wayside. This happens to me in a lot of games, to be honest, and certainly in High Frontier, I catch myself cheating all the time. So I'm not too shocked, but I'm going to try to remediate it as I can. I hope I'm at the right base there. That's something Sianka, Rusianka, I assume. Yeah. And so neither of these ships is there. Let's pull them both back. All right. Point, everybody is just, who can, Japan, the obvious exception really, is just lifting materials to their bases. The North Americans, the only ones not going for a forward base really. They're trying to make it so they can cash this thing in, get some more chits, and then start building up maybe their refineries or whatever. I feel like I've jumped too far ahead in terms of bases, and not, it's more important for me to explore and find stuff. So for example, getting to Neptune, well, what's available? This is not a bad research world, but let's play out some of the discoveries before we rush off to start building it up. Uranus is good enough to start, building colonies on. It's beyond the Saturn, so therefore it's worth as much as anywhere else. Asia jumps the action to take an attack on this. They managed to find it, and they managed to find it big. They have like 6 tactics points off the die rolls, plus 2 more here. 7, 8 tactics points, I think. There might be more hiding in there. I don't know. It's hard to figure everything out. I should have that on a card, but I think that's all there is. Combat values are also there. So I can refuse to make this direct fire, and then each of the 2 points, so I've got +4 points of damage that I can inflict, which pretty much will destroy this thing. Now, it does not have strike combat. Yeah, it does not have strike combat capability, I don't think. Right? I'm trying to see I think without drones you can't do strike combat, but I'm not positive. If you have the tech fighter drones per fighter squadron in the fleet, if it's a strike combat and you have this, you can wish drone squadrons as fighters or bombers to attack. My feeling was that strike combat absolutely required the drones, but I'm not absolutely certain about that. I'm not seeing that. If it is a strike combat and you have fighter drones, decrease the damage on your fleet during strikes by 1 per fighter in your strike. If you use them as bombers, you can increase damage. Okay, well, I have that +4 to begin with, which I could also use elsewhere. Add your combat values +1 for each. Yeah, I think it can still do strike combat. You must have the tech space missiles to inflict any damage in strike combat, and I don't believe pirates have that. I'm not sure. It doesn't specify that. We, I'm sure, have this. I don't know. I thought it's fairly early. We have space missiles. Is that what they're talking about? I don't fucking know. My brain is not working anymore. Space missiles, yeah. So, I don't think pirates have space missiles. They always attempt to choose direct fire. It's not clear one way or the other. I've always assumed they didn't. But let's say they do, just for the sake of argument. Well, I have one that I can decrease. So let me think, because I don't know what my die roll is. So all I need to do is 2 points of damage, I think, to wreck this thing. Which means I can put 4 of the 8 points that I have towards destroying it at a point each, a point per 2. And that means I have 4 extra, which, what's the decrease ratio? Okay, so I'm at -2, -3, I think, for my fighter drone. I don't remember what the damn symbols are. God damn it, it's not in this fucking book, it's over here. I hate icons. I really do. When they start getting to combat. Combat value, ship includes drones. Okay, so, yeah. Don't know why how many drone squadrons it has doesn't suffice to tell you that it has drones. Alright, just to confuse me. So the pirate will be the red die, and I don't know what's going on anymore. But I roll an 8 with that, I guess, and I'm guaranteed to destroy it because I spent the 4. But I'm at -3, I think, to hits. So an 8 at -3 to hits, I take no damage, so I destroyed it, and I get all the bonuses. And that's pretty much what I expected to have happen. But, I mean, if combat were a regular occurrence, it would settle into my brain better. And it may as I go. The direct fire was settling in, but now with the missiles, I don't know. Doing all that gets me not only, the bonus points and victory points and everything, but it also clears the way so that my freighter can start moving, and I think I'm done with movement for Asia. Which now means it's up to the next player to make a decision. Well, nobody else has the desire to jump ahead, so we go back to Russia. Halfway through the exploration, South America just went. We had a couple interesting results, so I want to point them out. First of all, the Asians found better gas around Uranus, and nice science base there, nice fuel production, really appealing. you know. That kind of puts this to shame. Although the fact that this could be a bio research base is kind of nice. This chit is now greatly weaker than that one. Problem with this, no one can build a base there until they get the pressure hull, and nobody's gone for that yet. Asia's kind of like, you know, maybe I'll hold off on building the base this decade and build it next decade, because this is really appealing. Of course, we'll see what happens. They lost their flyby doing that, though. And the other side, South America ended up depleting the near-Earth asteroid. And so that's stuck with that card for probably life. But, you know, they got some nice numbers on it. Fucking shit. I realized I've been screwing up. This is a Titan chip. I've been thinking it was Triton out there. No, Titan's over here, and it's panned out. Was gone before that came out, so nobody could have gotten it. Nobody's really been doing much except they've been taking plinks at this because, hey, we don't want that to happen. Well, the EU took a plink with a telescope. They broke their telescope, but they also found a really nice chip there, and that also is kind of a maybe it's worth waiting until I get range 4 to jump out there to Neptune or whatever. Triton's chit is actually very, very easy to use. It doesn't have humongous production, you know. It's got nicely balanced production though, which is good. But it's got a nice research check, which again is kind of beginning to make this a more questionable card, and making even the possibility of skipping over Uranus if somebody can do that. Now the vehicle range has to go up to 4, which means we need the recall, we need the space operations one here as well in order to get there. Everybody's got this, but that's not as easy as the pressure shell, which is sitting right here, just ready. Anyone can go forward for that. Finish things up with Asia building their base there. A little bit of enhancement of other bases. Nothing too exciting there. I'm gonna have to stop here, possibly for the day. I had a big late lunch, whatever, something, and ever since I've gotten ill, digesting food taxes my body more, and like I think that's part of why I'm feeling fuzzy and slow, and like everything's just fucked up. So it's part of the clumsiness that you're seeing around here. All right. Okay, now I'm worried. What the fuck happened? So I have 2 small spaceports here. Obviously, that can't be the case. I'm worried that I built 2 up from scratch at Russia, Kara, wherever the fuck that is. That's out here. That's been there for a little while. It's not impossible that I did. It's also possible that I was building one up somewhere else and didn't place it. Now these whites are large spaceports, but I'm really afraid. It's so fucking hard to tell because that I actually built up a second full spaceport there because it was hidden under a counter or something. Which means, yes, those Russian ships should have arrived already. So, Jesus. Let me shift this out there and give them all kind of goodies, because I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened. Because I thought I was ready to move out there. And not to Saturn, of course. Out here. Crap. Oh well. Be a little bit of a hairy turn because there's a lot of shit hitting the flyby boxes at this turn. Not just that new Russian ship that probably should have reached there earlier, but yeah, a lot of other stuff. Combats everything, so given my propensity for fucking up today. I feel a little better than I did on the last turn. I've digested my meal. Probably not having anything else to eat today. The pirate ship avoided the combat. They found each other, but he got enough tactics to avoid the combat. The South America jumped to the beginning of the line. But I can stack these together as a fleet. And then what I could do is move them together someplace, thereby avoiding any real danger that pirate could possibly present. Except I couldn't move without searching, so I'd have to have them split up, which means the pirate could catch this. So I gotta stick around there and waste a turn. Okay. Russians managed to wipe out the last of the pirates with no losses to themselves. They got a big modifier in their favor on the table. Again, there's a question of whether or not this could have been a strike combat, and if it was, what that means. Like, they have space missiles, which appears to be the limitation on whether or not you can do strike combat at all. And the drones, I think, are more like fighters. You can launch the missiles without the fighters, like cruise missiles or whatever. So then the question is, well, do the pirates have it? Otherwise, why do they always pick direct fire? I don't know. But I'm assuming they have the technology, essentially. So I fought it out as though they did. And the Russians had enough points that they could prevent any damage, basically. And because it's difficult to get searches out of here, people don't have their spaceports there yet, which would allow me, to search out in Uranus. We have a flood of those military vessels over around Mercury. That may just be asking for a war to start. I doubt it. It's not to anybody's advantage to really have military versus military, and with them all consolidated there. If anything, that's a peacekeeping mission. All right, on to exploration. All right, pushing out to turn 6. And what do we got? Well, we got the new Russian base. And, with all my thinking about, hey, did I want to do this or whatever? Yeah, but the whole plan was to get out there. Get out there a little quicker than other people. And it's possible this might end up with a lot of bio research, which might be appealing. More appealing maybe than physics research, I'm not sure. Of course, if I find life there, but that's almost impossible. Other people, a lot of building up of settlements, actually, and other stuff of that nature. China has a small spaceport, which means they can now make it to Uranus. And that's pretty cool. I moved that already. I think this is it for the night. I think I play video games for what time is left, because I'm not gonna be able to get through the decade. Whatever. Yeah, it's kind of a pity, because I would really like to push through a little bit faster than I am. It's getting to the point where it just feels very much the same. And games tend to do that. I don't mind it. I'm enjoying the storyline that's happening. It's just, I feel at some point the combat may start. And that's going to be when somebody's clearly ahead, other people can beat them up. Now, I'm not a person who likes to count victory points, to the point and that and whatnot. I don't like to try to guess at that even. Granted, these are hidden but trackable. Everything else victory point wise should be kind of obvious. But I'd rather just go by sense of feel, which doesn't work very well the first time you're playing something. I could probably do a good sense of feel otherwise, but I'd rather not I'd rather not work through and calculate everything out, which makes it harder to make that decision. Oh, so-and-so's way ahead. I'm not clear that anyone is way ahead. China looks like they're doing pretty damn good. Russia's doing okay. I am not convinced that anyone else is doing all that well, which means those are the people that we want to take down. And we probably want to aim for one of them, not both at once. But if they're smart, they might work together and try to defend against a coalition of everyone else. Of course, by doing that, maybe the answer is let one of them pay and hope I can make it to the end of the game before things get too ugly. But yeah, it's beginning to look a little bit along those lines. And China definitely doesn't want to upset the boat by starting a war with Russia, which may hurt them as well. And if they do, even if they get the best solution and kind of win that war and get more points off of it, they look like even more of a bunny hopping out ahead, and somebody wants to go schwack them. Right. Okay. As I'm building material shipping, whatever, plans for the turn, sending up what loads I'm sending, preparing my ships for movement, I came to notice something with Japan that, everybody's going to see them do this, of course, and say, hey, that might be a cool idea, which is, I have a lot of iron here, not a lot of other materials. So I'm going to build a booster over here from this base and start flinging stuff outward. One thing that I've noted that I cheated on, the Japanese built one warship at a base that they could not, this guy here, and I think other people did too, yeah, because I see other CV5s out there, that they could not have launched without a booster according to the rules. I'm a little iffy on that rule. Not in the sense that I don't think it should exist, but in the sense that these ships are able to stop at bases and take off and everything. There's basically a rule that says on your initial launch of a CV, no matter where it comes from, it has to launch with a booster. That increases the cost significantly, and I think I'm just going to keep disregarding it. In addition to that, a lot of boosts to the outer bases. I dismantled one ship. The Japanese had a scout type ship that I couldn't recuperate, so I turned it into stuff. And it was a CV2, so, it has a 1 in 100 chance of blowing up every time I fly it anyway, so. Anything else going on of excitement? I don't think so. Just, yeah. The North Americans are trying to get their chits converted by the end of the decade so that they get another set of chits. Those tend to be a good deal anyway, even if, in these cases I'm going to be basically turning in probably one boost. So that costs me the cost of the boost. I double my money, but so I make a little bit of cash off of it, but I also get rid of the chit and get maybe a more valuable chit next decade. As of the fleets in play and the differentiation in the actions, balancing who's going where, shit like that, I'm getting closer and closer to, if not exceeding, the limits of my poor little brain. It's becoming tough at this point to play this many different countries at once. And I'm not sure I would advise it. I don't know that 7 players is particularly advantageous. I see some neat things about it. But honestly, I think the game maybe in 3, which may be more historically accurate. It's hard to tell. Look, North America, I'm not so sure about Russia, Europe, China, these are major powers that, could conceivably still run a space program. Up and comings, yeah, Japan maybe. Asia, I don't know that India and Pakistan will get their shit together in 10 years. That seems pretty damn unlikely. South America, Africa, that's probably the biggest fantasy of all. Russia, Maybe. Russia still has a space program, which is more than you can kind of say for North America until recently. But economically, they're not what they used to be. Could they really force their way in the way they can in this? But certainly, you know, that leaves you with like what? Maybe 5 powers that are reasonable. Even at 5, I think you have so much balance of power type situation that it would be very difficult to go to war. In 3 or 4 people, I think it's quite possible that warfare becomes more of an appealing option than it is in 7, where it's like, oh yeah, I'll be helping 6 other people if I take somebody down. Well, 5 other people if I take somebody down, you know, more than and I'll be hurting myself to do it probably, or at best breaking even. The Chinese had a nice exploration of the Kuiper Belt where they got a reduction, got a decent amount of points off of it. That cleared out the engineering bin, and this is what there was out there. Not necessarily correlating with the size of the stacks, because there are 1 point and 5 point counters. I think the game only went, I don't think it had like the 5 point counters. I think those were added in the expansion, well, yeah, those look like all bio counters that were removed, so I don't know. Maybe they just didn't print the 5 point bio counters and they had to go in or something. I don't know. But there were a bunch of high valued counters that had to go into the mix. Bio's a little easier to get in a way because you get it from depleting CVs, and as the game goes on, CVs become more important. But they may have found that there are so few bio planets that you're really not getting much. Other than that, we had a successful South American exploration there, which gets points. Great. But the big thing, the reason I picked up the camera, I had all kind of ships sitting around the sun. All the warships were sitting around the sun observing it. They can't do that. It's like a gas giant. So everybody's on Mercury searching all these ships. A little cluster down here drained things real fast with all the ships that could actually mine being gone. Found this was a multiple draw find for the moon because it was the last marker on it. It also succeeded in the mining. That was kind of cool because I get the biochip, and it basically costs me a fuel and a supply because I'm at Mer and a turn. But I'm going to haul the resources there anyway, so it's kind of cool. And that'll let me build up some settlements at Mer, or maybe ship stuff somewhere. I don't know. I may just decommission ships. This one especially is pretty iffy. It's a pretty weak warship at a CV3. If we're getting to the bigger, heavier warships, if we're actually going to go to war, it makes sense to use them. And if we're not going to war, there's nice ones for exploration that, you know, that one just isn't very good at anything. So it's probably better turning it into resources. All right, on to the bases. Yeah, this is probably like the end for tonight. I'm only doing one. I'm a little foggy, and it's late. I took a nap, and that's part of the problem, but I'll just play computer games for the rest of my day. Nothing too exciting except another one of these damn spaceports showing up because I need a small one there. And it's funny. I mean, you look, there's plenty of small mining stations left, plenty of small supply stations left. The truth is just that, like, you're going to want to build up the big ones. And at the point in the game where you're small enough, like, that you might have small space stations on most of your things, or small mines on most of your things, you're probably not spread out very far. I mean, you know, it's physically possible. There's no question that you would need a lot of those little counters. But if I were going to withhold one thing from the counter mix, it would be the smaller ones rather than the larger ones. It just doesn't feel like there's enough of the space station and refineries. Now, refineries are a little different because you got the option of research stations as well. So I do still have... Nope, we got a problem there too. We are out of refineries, I think. Yeah. Which is going to be a problem, because then I'll have to find a different color counter to use for that, or start writing counters and making them up. Okay, so most of the people just lifting materials to various places, not always to the outer limits. A little bit of not just Japan, but also Asia is now flinging materials from further back bases, building a booster out there to see what they have there. One of the more interesting options, well, there's a few things. So like the North Americans, I'm going to send these out exploring, mining, trying to get resources for here to keep pushing further. We've already hit Uranus, and now we can just keep pushing forward. Probably do not want to wait, you know, like the Russians making the mistake, perhaps, of not putting a base around here. China, however, is thinking that they'll hold off. Now, they have the capability to haul materials and maybe actually set up, because I have far enough distance to set up my base. But let's see, I'll be coming from, I think this is Jupiter, so that would be a 4-point move. I haven't decided yet. 0.6 would be 2 turns. 2 turns from now, you know, that I could set up here and get that research this turn. And maybe it makes sense because China is doing fairly well on physics research. In fact, a lot of people are. Bio is where everybody is kind of lagging. And this is not a bad location, other than the fact that its research is a little less, its fuel. This creates significantly more overall resources by doing a fuel production. But fuel is maybe the least valuable of all the resources. You know, and there's already a good fuel location here. What, at Mars? There's another good one here. So yeah, fuel is not exactly that appealing. So I think I am going to actually follow the Russian-US lead with these guys and get my materials in place for a base there. Because if I get there, and I should be able to, well, I might be able to get the materials to the base as well. So 2 turns from now puts me on turn 9. If I build the base on turn 9, I would have to have additional materials like this would have to go there with the research station materials. Now, I may be able to mine those materials within the time. So I could also drag some with me, but I don't think that's necessary. Something was pointed out about the blockades. I screwed up with the pirates. They don't actually blockade, so the settlement reduction shouldn't have happened. I try to keep up with the things the designer points out that I did wrong as much as I can. That one's big, though. I didn't, you know, I'm screwing up so many things. It's kind of hard to keep track of them all, and I just don't find when I flip open that rule book that the answers jump out at me the way they sometimes do. I feel like modern style rule books don't do as good a job for me as the old SPI ones did. Funny, I'm moving materials around so much from bases or using them otherwise that I'm having a hard time. So like a Russian fleet reached Saturn, and I'm kind of like, there's nothing in Saturn. I can't refuel there. I don't have the supplies there. The nearest place back at Jupiter. Similarly, this unit was looking, hey, can I go to Earth? No, Earth doesn't do it. I've got to find my... and I screwed up. Earth doesn't do it. I don't have fire resources up there. But Mars doesn't either. So yeah, I'll go to Earth, and I can either dismantle one of these ships, or I can carry partial resources as a freighter, slowly hauling stuff out until I get to a place where I can re-energize. I was wrong about the Russians. I had from Mir, or to get to Mir, I actually had someone who had been doing some mining, I think on the moon, but I don't know, and pulled some materials into there, so I can actually land there, and I'm set up to do so, and recover, or I can dismantle a ship. Neither one is particularly. I'm really not sure I want all of these ships. This one is a good building ship. This one is the crappy warship that I was thinking about dismantling before and then forgot about today, because I'm just like, oh, I need to recover that ship. Yeah, no, not necessarily. And a lot heading out into Neptune and Uranus. What else? Wow. Shit shifting around. And I'm constantly missing things like, there's a boost happening here that I caught at the end and out of order had to do it. It's not a big deal, but it's like there's just this regular, oh shit, I gotta do this. And in an opposed game, I'd be like, hey, do you mind if I roll for this? I was set up for it and I just didn't do it. And some people might not allow it, but usually most groups are okay with like understanding that, yeah, people lose track of shit in a game this big. And Japan and South America, both of whom have a lot of exploration out there at the fringes, each got 2 depletions, so they pulled a lot of points in for their research. Other people, not so interesting stuff. And we shove through another turn. Not a lot in terms of the building. A couple of people actually built defensive stations just because they had a glut of iron kicking around in some location. And it's like, if things are going to go to shit, we want these. Alright. Got another little fuck up. Sent a EU ship too far out for the kind of base that I have out there, so I'm going to throw it back at its base. And it doesn't make much difference. There wasn't much it could do here. And I will be able to move the Frida out there. Of course, that can't mine, but hey, that's what I basically am losing, is the opportunity I last turn I could have mined. Oh well. Yeah, once Japan did it, a lot of nations are starting to build these boosters to fire stuff between planets, for whatever that's worth. It does help it does help improve the transportation situation. So for example, here I get to get some resources there, and I don't have them heading in right now. So, it's kind of an appealing little thing. It doesn't really cost me anything because I have the excess resources to build the rocket here. It doesn't cost me cash. Not that Russia is short on cash. They really ought to be launching some shit. But they're not that rich. There are other countries that are richer that also aren't blowing their money left and right either, for whatever reason. Good reason not to is actually, reaching these conversion type technologies. So like this, China can spend money and get physics research. That's so valuable. That's probably actually the way that you fill out your chart, because the solar system's getting pretty panned out in terms of exploration. It's not all the way there, but it's getting there. First with a probe are kind of cool, hitting these gas giants. I didn't do one over here, well, it didn't count over here, but with the ones with the actual gas giant tokens, they get big bonuses on the probe. This one's +6 actually, but this one's +4, which got me up to a 21, so I got 2 picks automatically. That's including technological bonuses and all kind of other stuff, but it still didn't get me a depletion. Exploration, at least decision-wise, we're seeing more going on in Neptune up here, North America, challenging that rover. Can't go shoot it. This is one reason to go shoot the robotics and to be at an embargo state, is you can just like knock out your competition out on the search board. And as searching is becoming more tightly constrained, that's a big deal. Successful mining that tapped them out. And I guess the big news is Mercury is no longer available, which means all these CVs are going to make their way back to whatever end that they involve in, because they can't do anything at the sun. I chose not to fire anything at the sun because, yes, it's a little closer than the stuff out here, but this stuff is just more useful. Building a base out on Mercury just doesn't do me much. And maybe Venus is worth victory points, I don't remember. I seem to remember it's worth something. It's got a nice card on it, that's for sure. And let me just tinker around with the bases, and maybe I'll come back and tell you a little something about that. A little screw up. With so little stuff in this base, I kind of forgot it existed and shot all my stuff to the not quite frontier base. Again, I don't know what's going on, you know. But I really should be building stuff there. It's got the large research station, so it's not that big a deal. I don't really need the spaceport, but I do. That is the next thing I want to build, is a spaceport there, here, so that I can continue out into Neptune with my CVs. I don't know. End of the decade, one of the problems that I have is many of the players have their CVs flying around, so I can't just dismantle them. In the case of the EU, they would actually like to dismantle one, notably this one. It doesn't serve a whole lot of purpose. Yeah, I could fling it way out into space, but it would be easier to relaunch it from Earth. However, I got no place to dismantle it. I'd have to bring it to Mars at the closest, which is further than Earth, or land it on Earth and turn it into resources there, which I could deliver. So almost everybody's just throwing resources around. Now, for most people, I think it's okay. The EU wants to dismantle because they're going to have to pay $4 for that. Maybe more because they may have too many bases as well. Looks like they have one too many bases as well. So that's, I think, $6 for that ship being in existence. No one else dismantled anything. People like Asia didn't need to. I have this freighter that I'm going to go fling back empty to grab stuff because it's cheaper to dismantle it and send it back out, I think. It's really not that expensive, so it may be better to just turn it into goods here. You know what? I'm going to do that. That's 2 iron and 1 fire. Because I really don't want to, I could actually, no, I don't have, I could rebuild it here, but yeah, the cost of sending it back is higher, you know, in terms of that time. There's no money that would have been spent on that, so it kind of was okay, but it would still take 3 or 4 turns to get back. This way, if I actually do really want it, I can just build it again. But no one else is in a position where they had something they wanted to dismantle that was sitting around on a station, and that's about that. Was there something else I wanted to discuss? I can't think of anything. All right, so let's push forward. This is the last turn of the decade, and then we get to do the economics. Almost making a mistake that I'm afraid I may have made before a couple of times, where I moved a couple of ships into the flyby box and almost didn't move this one forward. I would not be shocked if there's a couple of times where ships got lost in space for a turn or something, for whatever that matters. Just lost a couple of boosters, and here's the one thing I did want to tell you about. I have a Russian warship that's not necessary right now, and I could decommission it. It's, you know, kind of low level or whatever. But if the war breaks out, having that thing built is better than not. So keeping an old surplus warship around, as long as it's not going to cost me $4 billion, seems worthwhile. And I do have the capacity for it right now. it could end up getting destroyed in battle or something, you know. Not destroyed, but beat up to the point where, you know, I don't want to repair it, I just dismantle it. The Russians aren't the only ones who lost a booster. The Europeans lost one, their big one as well. Bunch of ships ending up in port now, which doesn't help because it's a turn too late, but whatever. I don't think anything I wanted to dismantle. The warships, a whole bunch of them showing up at Earth. Why? Well, the reason is, or heading towards Earth, the reason is that Earth is actually the easiest place to make the decision where I've got to go. Next turn, I'll be in the flyby box, and depending on the diplomatic situation, I can either just move to Mars and maybe dismantle them, throw them out further for exploration, or use them as military ships, you know, in whatever sectors look like I need to start accumulating ships. So everybody with the military ships just threw them into there, coming out of Mercury. Exploration. I'm being chatty, but at least about the game, which is better than usual. There I go. We had the physics chits run out under the Chinese, and so we got a lot of the physics, pretty much everything we're going to see. You know, we're going to get the boost out of here and off the tech, and there is no physics research in play. Plus whatever shows up this turn. But the reason I wanted to come back in addition to that was I decided to do something that I don't usually do, which is this base detector, base builders, they actually did an exploration. Why? Because I'm not decided if I want to build the base this turn. If I wait a turn, I might end up with the pressure hulls able to go here. This may be a more appealing place. I'm torn by it. And it's... See, China is doing better, as is almost everybody, on physics than they are on biology. It's easier to get physics research or physics information off the board than it is biology information. So I probably will still go with building that base, but I was willing to take the risk that I fail, you know, and flip the counter. It would give me an extra biochit, and it would maybe mean that I hold off. Plus, nope, I thought I might have a ship coming, but I've got this one, which the nice thing is if I build the base this turn, next turn, this can offload right there, and maybe, no. It will not be able to unflip because I will only be able to build one level of spaceport there. So yeah, I have to make my choice, but there's a lot of resources here, so I probably will haul those two resources. Not positive. That puts us to the end of the decade, and base is built. The Chinese indeed built their new base. They retired. They fatigued their ship doing so. And other people, well, largely upgrading their outermost base to get some production, whatever. North America sold off a couple of materials they were holding on to see if they, you know, wanted to throw more stuff up there, but they were all set up. We have a mission to Venus, which means we need pressurized hulls to get that, and Charclaw, which could have ended up going to whoever got the initiative, I guess. I don't know if it's this turn or this decade or last, but Charclaw actually got killed off this turn, so that goes away and is not available. Too late. Lots of crew vehicles out there looking at it. One problem I'm having is I'm dripping sweat. It's not all that hot here, but I sweat ridiculously nowadays, and that makes this dangerous because we've seen, you know, probably a drip of water or something, but something damaged the board very easily. I know the rule book will just melt. These glossy rule books, they fade away if you get any water on them. So I gotta be careful, and I don't know whatever happened to my bandana, which I used to wear to prevent that kind of thing. I do have the fan and I didn't turn that on. I might be back to finish the economic tonight, but I don't know. It's such a back-breaking task, the tech part. The rest of it is fine. The politics markers down. When I was reading through this, I see collect politics markers and roll for events. And that set off a little alarm bell. Events, plural. What's up with that? Yes, starting in 2100, there were supposed to be 2 events. So we've had a couple of turns where we missed that, or a couple decades. And again, you know, this shit happens. So let's do these live, because this is the most exciting thing. In a lot of ways, it really is. Surveyor, roll percentages, select a world, and draw a world card. If the card applies, you replace it, which can get rid of one of those things. So this is more painful than I like to do on a video, but whatever. So 38. And the reason is it's hard to find the world numbers. So 38, this is in the 50s, 36, 37, so far that's really promising. Okay, so I found it, it's Vesta, and we see if it replaces. Is Vesta icy? No, so it doesn't just change. Wouldn't have had much effect if it had. We already have bases established in the system. Nobody wants another base there. It might, you know, have some minor tangential impact. 83 is Pirate Swarm. Roll to place an extra pirate this economic phase. Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember that. I think we're at 3 pirates, but I have to look up whether they're strong or not. I'm going to kind of pile them up there. So I think there's 2 rolls normally, but there may be 3 normally. I don't know. Remembering all these numbers is tough. I have a hard time with it, at least. And now we go to the initiative, where this is the point where people, again, have to make that war decision. Are they thinking about it, you know? And there's only 3 people who can bring things to war. If any one of them is adventurous enough to do it, and you know, yeah, it can go to blockade. And there's some capabilities for that, but less. I've had discussions with the designer about whether it's percentage or points, and he seemed to say that it was percentages, but then seems to be backing that points is what makes more I really don't know what the answer is from that, and I'm not sure if it was covered in the errata. Digging through the amount of errata this game has just doesn't seem worth it, to tell you the truth. Especially since I can't write it into the rule book because it's glossy. But here we have the obvious situation. Europe at a plus 40% ends up with a 5 because they rolled so low. You know, should they have a minimum of 45? Well, it probably wouldn't make too much difference because the next lowest was 44. Everybody else would have at least as many points as they have. So in terms of actual effect, it's not that much. But we got some big point values out there for this. But that's part of the reason why I'm not willing to say, I'll spend for the 10, you know, spend a politics point for 10%. Because if it's 10 points, I'm assured 10 points movement. You know, I get 10% of my die roll, of my potential maximum die roll. If it's 10%, I might get 0.1 points, which, you know, it's going to round up unless I already had some percentage, right? And most players do. So that's where it goes. I wasn't able to figure that out, and I really just don't have the focus anymore to like deal with like trying to futz out exactly what is meant. What I've got is an exceedingly random initiative system that means that spending those politics markers doesn't make sense given that I can spend them on technology. So I kind of left it to, you know what, I'll just roll randomly, didn't throw anybody's points in except for their bonuses. And the reason being, you know what, if the opportunity shows up, plus I'd have to spend chits for diplomacy. If the opportunity seems to show up where like a couple of us who are interested in a war, in an aggressive war, end up with an initiative bonus on other people, we'll take it, I guess. I mean, it's not clear as a new player how much that initiative is important for the war, but it might end up impacting choices made in terms of the tech tree. Although, of course, you have to declare war before that, so both people know to prepare for it. There is something really kind of skewed about that. Like, granted, in a game like EU, it's 5-year turns. This is 10-year decades with lots of little pulses essentially in between them. But I gotta tell you, it feels like the decision to go to war and the initiative which might impact that all kind of depend upon the technology. If you're not going to get the technology to go to war, you delay for another decade. So there's like this inherent suppression, at least in my mind, for my mind, as to, I don't want to attack. And add to that there's no clear benefit to the battle, to engaging in battle. I mean, if I know that I totally can outproduce the other guy and throw a bunch of fleets into play, and he's not going to be able to. If it's just that obvious a situation, but it's not. It's like you're declaring war and giving them, enough warning that because all their production comes in at the decade level, and you're giving them this warning, they have enough time to fully mobilize before you go to war. You're not going to get some kind of surprise strike in them. There's no reason for them to maintain a military particularly. There's just a lot of factors that make it inopportune to start a war, and these all depress that sort of desire, which is kind of the I'd like to see how this works, and also, I'm getting kind of bored just building bases, I kind of want to throw some troops together, whatever that is, because this isn't primarily a war game, that's clear, but it has a fair combat system in it, and there's kind of a desire to attempt that. And then you add to that my own natural proclivity to avoid fighting, because it's almost always, there's usually a big hump that I have to get over to convince me that actually launching an attack in a game is worth the risk. Like, some of that's my own, peacenik ways. I'm like, I know wars are generally bad for the economy that engages in them. If you look at the people who start wars or who are first involved in them, it's usually problematic. Sometimes it might be worthwhile for someone like the U.S. in World War I and II to fund a war and then to sweep in and do some stuff afterwards. But someone who's stuck in it from the beginning, man, that's usually really painful for them. And that kind of psychology just sticks in me. So like, even games where you want to make that jump for a fight, Stellar Conquest comes to mind, where sometimes it's to your advantage to just launch an attack right away, and maybe you win the game by doing it, and maybe you lose the game by doing it. And those are kind of the things. And Titan's a very similar game where stomping someone out can get you a huge advantage very early on. But most games, unless it's like trying to develop something like the World War II, the way the Germans kind of build up and become something more oppressive and dangerous looking, by small conquests. But that's not really the same kind of situation as a couple fairly equal powers engaging in something that might just drag them down, and it might come to the position where somebody else can step in, stomp one of them, and get all the advantage out of it. That probably says more about my psychology and psychology in gaming, at least, than anything else. Anyway, this is what we end up with, and where do we throw down to? It's time to make the diplomatic decisions. And it's just such a hard call to make, because I feel like, I'm risking everything on what may be a crapshoot that I don't see any clear advantages on, but we'll see. Boredom won the better of me on this one. Actually, I did some die rolling. Europe and South America have decided, you know what, we think China's ahead. You have a big stack of chits. We're worried about Russia too. They made a check for Russia first. It didn't do it, but then they made a check for China, who looks even stronger because they have this big pile of victory chits too. And they're like, all right, let's do it. Nobody else is, will try to plunk off something. They just don't see that as that valuable yet. We'll see, maybe as we see a war start to develop, we'll see that. Both are doing the minimum to get to war, which is 3 politics markers, because the cost is high to try to do so. And now the question is, does China want to try to stop it? Now, trying to go against 2 different nations doesn't reduce the cost. So I could say, I'm actually more worried about one nation other than the other. Now, these nations aren't trying to ally either, which would cost additional points at that increased value from what I see. Right? Like here, it gives the option against one person, but what it doesn't do is indicate that the sort of question I have, and the rules don't support that question at all, so I'm not pursuing it much. Of course, maybe somewhere else they do, and that's one of the problems with this approach to rules, or to just more to reading the rules, but also to the rules themselves, not expressing some kind of link that says, yeah, but keep this in mind, is, the EU is spending 3 against China. It would have to spend, I think, 3 more to try to start working towards an alliance with South America. And that would be 3 more levels. So we'd start getting up to a very, very high number of politics points to perform an allied attack on someone. Again, a disincentive. Does that matter much? Probably not. Europe can operate its fleet on its turn. South America can operate its fleet on its turn. They outnumber the Chinese. Being co-belligerents is probably sufficient, in which case, no reason to move forward, right? Even if I could get to free trade, that wouldn't help me much. I have to get up to alliance to start stacking ships, as far as I know. Maybe defensively you can do it differently. We'll see that as the combat shakes out. But anyway, that's what we have. Now, does China want to spend anything to defend themselves? Well, if they can get one side to fail, that's good. Who has the most warships? Good question. I don't think the EU has any warships on the board, so I am going to spend 1 pip and 1 pip only to maintain friendship with South America and prevent them from going to war with me. And that's another disincentive. Okay. Now, actually resolving these is done, I think, after the payment? Or do you get to... Yeah, once all players have announced, you check them. And there are 6 or less, and there's nothing, you just roll. So I've got 2 attempts to try to increase tensions between Europe and China. And we got successes in both cases. So now China and Europe are at war. Great. And that puts me to the South Americans. Now they have 2 attempts as well to go to war. And they failed both times, whereas China was spending 1 attempt to make them happier. So we may end up with kind of a random increase, and indeed we do. So South America, despite its intention to go to war, is somehow convinced by the Chinese, nah, we'll go to free trade. And poor Britain, without any intention by South America, they completely complied with the agreement, ends up alone in a war, and actually with a better political situation or a harder attempt to get to the war. And the neat thing about this is we'll get to see some actual player-on-player action going on. And that's going to get us to production, which is all normal and regular. Normal and regular, except that China and the EU may well, and almost certainly, will be tailoring their resource production and maybe their resource shifting towards building more military vessels. I want to step back to discuss the idea of like a war alliance gone awry. Sometimes shit like that has happened in history. You know, think about situations like Italy in World War I, where it wasn't absolutely clear which side they were going to be on. You know, and if you're looking at a decade's worth of maneuver and manipulation, Germany actually had a fair web of countries who would not have gone to war with them. Their only real enemy usually was France during the period before World War I, but they ended up somehow or another aligning most of the world against them, or most of Europe against them. Even, you know, disentangling Italy, who they had a working alliance with still, and Russia, who theoretically they had a working alliance with, but that was pretty clear wasn't going to apply anymore, and only ended up holding on to Austria. So this is kind of a situation that you could say there's some similarity there, where, yeah, this is more like Italy, but it's not the player's choice, right? They did what they could to go to war with China, which might feel a little weird, but okay. You don't know, you know, democracies or whatever might, well, even oligarchies might have forces working under the covers that prevent you from moving in the direction that the player wants to move in. I still think that there's a problem that those kind of forces don't cause wars or cause good things to happen. It's only player action by spending the diplomacy, by spending the politics chips, that gets you into a war or economic agreement state. The same kind of forces, you know, that are applied. Well, you could say, well, you know, they were trying to go to war, but the forces that were opposed to that were funded by the Chinese in some way. And, you know, it does make some sense, but I just feel like there should be a little bit more randomness in that, and that wouldn't be a hard thing to change in the game, to tell you the truth. You could just have a set of die rolls that instead of everything, you know, instead of one country moving towards neutral on all boards, you can have a more complicated set of die rolls that kind of apply things. And it doesn't mean that the players have to follow them, mind you. You know, you could end up at war with someone and not pursue the war. There are games where that happens all the time. So it's not like it completely takes your agency away to do that. But it does provide opportunities that I feel are just kind of lacking because the actual expenditure to drive for war as a nation seems a little too high. Okay, so the resource production, some people did indeed have to pay costs for the bases only. Nobody actually had any extra ships that I could find. That's a tough hunt. It would be kind of useful to have some kind of track. I know there's that told you which ships, you know, you don't have or something like that, but that's okay. There's a lot of table space taken up by the player mats and everything, so adding more mat to hold the ships, I think I caught it. Somebody may have gotten $6 for free though. Most of the people producing to try to move forward, and of course that can be kind of tricky. We had some players who were okay with the unbalanced, and in fact even the EU was kind of okay with the unbalanced production that gets them more stuff. China, on the other hand, I believe, other than this iron here, May have played around. No, they went really unbalanced. They took the fire there instead. So actually, the EU may have tried to go balanced. They look like they succeeded in being more balanced in general, where they may have taken less resources to make sure that they can build the warships that they need to. Warships are heavy on iron, though, and the EU doesn't look like it produced a whole lot of iron, which may be an issue. And China may have produced iron here instead of supplies. Research is kind of interesting. You're seeing the effects of the people with lots of the bio research bases. Wow, they just really screwed their way up to the top. Other people are up there in bio too, not so much there, but it's less apparent when you're kind of in the pack. But look at this, like the North Americans, that much bio, this much engineering, you know. Big significant difference. Now, of course, North America didn't do all the robotic exploration, and a lot of that ended up getting people, more physics and engineering research. There's also the impact of this, and of course the national averages. So it's all in there coming up. Some people have tons of money, some people not so much. China has a shitload of money that should help them with the war, because they can, keep their ships operating more easily. It probably means that China and Europe are going to shy away from throwing robots out there. Those things are just fragile, right? And they're going to worry a lot more about getting CVs, and in particular the military CVs. And this will probably degrade both of their positions significantly, which is why we didn't want a war. And the Chinese aren't thrilled with it, but they think they're going to win it. All right. That gets us to resource transportation, where we'll throw some stuff around. The war factions have the capacity to throw 10 things around, so they have a little bit more movement capability. One problem they have, though, is they each only have one large spaceport big enough to build the big warships, and that's on Mars in both cases. It is possible right away for small CB2s to be built further out. However, those CB2s are a problem. The EU has all of its out, and that seems to be, to me, a grand total of one, which is not a warship at all, as opposed to the Chinese, who may have a warship hiding in here. They do. They have a little warship. So I could launch something little out in the colonies area, sort of like cruiser wars and such now. Again, this war is looking significantly in China's favor in a lot of ways. Conglomeration of heavier pirates now in an asteroid base here. Hey, I remembered one of the date changes. And another pirate out here. The other asteroid fell outside of the legitimate range. But we got turned out 4 pirates on the board. There were not enough trade markers for everyone. One thing I find kind of weird about that is I feel like the trade markers should be prioritized to colonies with settlements. So we've got things like new colonies out here that do not have a settlement on them yet, that I'm always kind of like, gee, I don't even know if they should have a trade marker yet. But it encourages me to build settlements out to them so that I can move the trade marker around, maybe be able to buy some resources or whatever in that settlement and get it there cheaper. But it feels a little weird when some people are being skipped out by it, who have spread their settlements out more completely. Where does that put us? I bet you we're getting close to tech, aren't we? Yes. Alright, time for my long series of fun playing chits around there. And this takes about an hour and a half to do. Again, not a short game at all. The economic phase, doing it solo, it's like doing the EU's economic phase solo. It's a little lighter, but, and it happens less often, right? How many turns are there? I've already done this already, but there's like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 turns as opposed to 60 of them. So a little different there. And I really do consider, here's the thing though, each of the, what I'd consider the equivalent to the pulses in EU are always 10, one per year. So those end up taking more effort. The economic phases, there's less of them, but the other side of it is still quite large. As I was contemplating hey, what do I want to do with the EU? And I'm like, maybe I want the recall rate back, you know? That sounds kind of appealing. Well, that set me to thinking, wait a minute, shouldn't combat require a recall though? It does. If you take damage, you have to take one. And I had one combat where the ship did not have, where it had a damage marker. It should have had to make a recall rate roll for every single damage chit that it takes. We're going to assume it just passed because whatever. But that would increase the cost to refitting the ship if it takes a recall failure as well. And ship decision making, a little different now with combat in place. So the EU looked and they're like, well, we'd kind of like to get cruisers or maybe faster movement or maybe a big bonus on the attack roll in combat, but we don't want to make that a lot easier for China. So what they did instead is they went for the recall rate. We don't really want to give that either, but we spent something that we probably wouldn't have spent. Like, if we were doing this normally, we'd just shoot into here where it's cheapest, you know, that's the obvious thing, but we don't care about crew exploration anymore. We're fighting for our lives now. And given the designer's connection with WIF, this is starting to create this sort of really exciting but much more disgusting concept, which is take something like WIF, which has a global map anyway, and apply a global war at the same time as this is going on. So you would have total war possible here as opposed to the limited war when you go to war. That just really kind of disgusts me in terms of like, wow, what would that mean? Would it go nuclear? All kind of ugly questions on that. But it does kind of bring this really interesting idea of the potential for combining this game with the Earth War game that would be happening at the same time, and how they could, you know, kind of link. This would become almost a sideshow once that war, you know, once a war on Earth ever starts blowing up. But an interesting sideshow, kind of like the colonial wars on Earth are. You know, the colonial aspects of World War I or World War II are. The problem with it, of course, is we're looking at, you know, over 100 years of technological improvements, and you'd have to, you know, it would be a massive game to cover that possibility, but a game that in and of itself might be interesting without the space aspect, and that could be linked with it. And I'm just like, whoa, dude. Though, where the focus of such a war would be, I think something more like the WIF Blitz model, which I haven't actually played, but I've played games that are kind of like that, where you're not focusing, you know, as much on all the operational levels of the global war, and worrying more on the strategic side of things would be more appropriately linked with this. You know, something that's probably playable in a shorter time than this, but where you're developing the technologies and working between these kind of blocks on Earth, diplomatically, etc. With space being kind of like an external module to it that, you know, would be effects and impacts that you could invest in that game, but then would link into this and directly play this instead. Just, I always want to link too many things. You know, this is a big enough game on its own, right? But of course, I love the idea of that total war with colonial operations happening. But you'd have to have captures of bases and stuff in it for it to make sense under that model. I'm really chatty. Not doing enough gaming. So I want to put more into each little action, but Asia made the choice to move into the trade routes thing, but they had a hard call. They've got this conversion. Do they throw money or do they throw a chit in? And that's always a tough decision there, because yeah, I have a decent amount of money, but not as much as some of the players, and maybe I can't use my chit. But on the other hand, I can't use my money until I get nanotech here, and up here, good God, that's just out of reach, right? Because I'm coming from here. Keep pushing along, and the initiative being really key in the tech chart, with China going after everyone else and EU going before everyone. It means the EU is paying a little more for everything. But I did come to a problem, which is the battleships tech. Gets me CV7s. I see nothing that gets me CV8s. Now, it's possible the colonizer hull does. It says victory conditions, sea rules. It doesn't say anything else. And if that's the case, then maybe these others do too, and I'm not aware of it. I don't remember anything about that, and I'm not sure where I would find, because the texts aren't explained that I recall anywhere outside of there, except in special cases. Now, it's not in the victory conditions. And it's not under ships that I see. And this is kind of disturbing. What I'm assuming is that this is where you get the CV8, but I can find no rule which backs that up in my Ooh. I didn't want to do any of the options, but yeah, I don't know of anything that talks about that. Now, maybe it's in the errata again. My assumption is just that that's CV8 because CV7 is here. But again, do these have any capabilities? Not that I know of. They're just victory point generators, big victory point generators. Kind of a hard luck decision here for the EU. I'm one fuel resource short from doing something kind of impressive, because I made it to antimatter and I have a ton of money. I could throw $30 in and buy myself to battleships, build a CV7, which is a significantly more powerful warship. Same number of missiles, etc., but it goes up to a 7 instead of a 4 combat value. That seems like a pretty big deal, given that the Chinese are chasing me everywhere else. They have the money, they could follow me, though. That's the problem. And what's wrong is I have enough resources here to build one of those suckers. Now, of course, I can't boost it from Earth because I don't have space elevators. So I have enough resources here, except I'm one fuel short. Had I thought a little more carefully or whatever, I'd be prepared to buy that. But I didn't think I had an opportunity to get up there. And with $50 in hand here, I actually do have the power to throw something big into play. At the end of the line, China managed to match. They had a bunch of chips left to spend. The EU on all their tech that has anything to do with military. They got the big attack roll bonus here. They got the speed. I was a little worried about, hey, maybe the EU's speed advantage by trimming a turn off or whatever, they could get somewhere a little quicker if they win a battle. They did not have the points to get here and here anyway. I mean, they do. They could throw $30 in and just boom, be there. And as a matter of fact, they had some, oh no, that's physics. Why do they have any physics left? I think I screwed up. Let me exchange these two. That may not be the reality, but this was the last thing they bought, and they drained themselves with that. Elsewhere, I guess, kind of interesting things, both North America and Russia heading up into terraforming territory. Do they want to do that? I mean, I don't know, maybe, but it may just help everyone here. Of course, there are some players who seem to be getting the pressure hulls, so if they go and start setting up their bases around Uranus, then maybe that starts making some sense, even though it helps China, as well. But the main reason for that is to get them into the genetic engineering space and get the bonuses there. Everybody up to bomber drones. This does not matter for combat. Yeah, I think for the most part the EU and China are on the same level, and the EU also, even if they could have put a battleship into place, they also were a fuel low, and you have to have the resources there at the beginning of the turn for it to matter, at the beginning of the decade for it to matter, because the beginning of the decade is the start of the war. Reminds me of the old computer game Empire, where you have to wait and be online at the exact moment when the turn switches, so you can get kind of a double turn out of it. It's not the same thing, but it's like the weirdness of having turns that are discretely limited by, hey, yeah, now this happens. That's always the case, but then when you have turns within turns like this, it becomes a little weirder. It doesn't bother me as much in EU because of the random end. Like it all is one turn to me. But here, because it's 10 full turns and then an actual production thing, somehow it just bothers me more to have those divides there. I flipped out the money and settlement growth and policy. Right on the settlement, we got up to 27 here on their Martian settlement. Yeah, it's slowly growing. But then over on policy, something interesting happened. First of all, we hit the 10 for everyone else. They won't be able to add to their policies without taking away a policy. And there's things that are pretty iffy, like getting a couple $billion. That just doesn't seem terribly valuable at this point. But the EU and China both upped their military, and that required a withdrawal from their diplomacy and technology, which means they will no longer get that bonus of 3 points per politics marker. But both of them felt like getting the additional tactics points was more important because they're at war. And most of the other people gaining their military capabilities. South America grabbed a robotic exploration, which seems like the next most valuable thing. I mean, getting the crewed vehicles and the bases is vital. Getting that technology is vital. The military, to get the initiative up, is pretty damn important. And now it's kind of like, where do you put your access? Well, I think everybody's going to follow kind of the same pattern. But when you're at war, I think you want to push to here. It might have been sensible for other people to push to there for a war, but the problem is that they lose a chip for that. So it's like, yeah, let's wait another turn and see how that goes. All right, we're done. We managed to stretch this out to 2 hours anyway with all the babbling, but I'm going to swap batteries and load this up.